want to make sure that folks on the line, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Marco, but I'm having trouble hearing other folks. It's going kind of in and out.
Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm speaking up, so am I do that?
Yeah. No, I mean the overhead microphone should pick everything up. But you're able to hear Melissa and myself, Max?
Yeah, I think the issue is coming in when folks are speaking over people. So just like be careful to one at a time.
Sounds good. Thank you, Max. So we can get started with the meeting.
All right. Thank you everyone for being at the April PRC meeting. We are in an interesting situation today where for the first time in my time being on the PRC, we have not met quorum in person. And that is okay. We will have some special things that we'll have to do, including Sarah, unfortunately, asking you to take some time to take care of yourself and sign off. Marco will speak to that.
Yes.
And so I'll go ahead and pass it off to Marco. Let's get to it.
Thank you, Shruti. So in the cases where we are unable to meet quorum per our electronic meetings policy, the commission cannot take action or vote on any item that is being presented before the body. The good news is there are no items up for discussion today that require a vote or action. It would also affect how we do certain kinds of business. So, for example, as part of our introduction and approval of meeting minutes, typically we're able to approve meeting minutes as part of our general business. That will not be able to be done tonight. We'll have to table that discussion for the next meeting when we are able to reach an in-person quorum, as well as any other business that may require any sort of decision, either by the commission or the chair, that may come up during tonight's meeting. So anything that may require, the decision to write a letter or to assign a commission member to a particular project or event or anything of that nature would need to be tabled for a future meeting. So that is the main gist of it. In terms of participation virtually, and I'm speaking, I think, Sarah, and is that Mark Lincoln? Mark, are you online tonight?
Yes.
Okay. So speaking specifically to Sarah and Mark as commission members, unfortunately, you will not be able to participate as a commission member at tonight's meeting since we don't have a physical quorum. There are two options. You are able to stay and spectate, or the option would be to leave the meeting and then join us again once we're able to reach a full in-person quorum. The recommendation by our county attorney's office, because of the issues related to FOIA, is for you to leave the meeting. So that is up to you because there are.
Take away the virtual meeting. The whole purpose is for them to be able to participate.
So there is personal liabilities associated with FOIA, and that's why I'm letting you know that you do have this option. So if you'd like to stay, that's up to you, or you can choose to leave the meeting at this time. But thank you anyway for your participation. And with that said, I can move forward with just introducing the meeting if you think that's fine.
Let's do it.
All right.
Actually, wait, should we ask some questions? Okay, we will be holding public comment as part of this.
Yes.
Can we have discussion after each?
We can have a general discussion, but again, no actions can be taken.
Okay, so questions from the commissioners in the room.
The ones that are in the room, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Great. All right. So again, my name is Marco Rivero. I am with the Park and Recreation Commission. I am the staff liaison. I would like to remind our attendees that the PRC meeting will be recorded. We also ask commissioners and presenters and attendees, please mute your microphones and turn off your video feeds if you're not speaking. For those attending via telephone, you can mute and unmute your microphones by dialing *6. The top toolbar contains a raise your hand function in case a commission member or presenter has a question. In this case, we will not be doing that. So for those of you commissioners that are attending, you'll only be able to attend as a spectator, or again, you can step off the call. The chat box will also be checked routinely, mainly to address logistical questions or issues during the meeting. As way of information, we'll be holding a public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. Each public commenter will have up to 3 minutes for public comment, and I will signal to the speaker once time is up. And thank you very much. I will turn it over to our chair.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for being here regardless. To Sarah and Mark, it's really just based on personal liability. I would suggest you guys just stay on mute if you'd like to listen into what we're talking about. We have 2 items on today's list. We will not be talking about letters at all, so other businesses can't say okay. But I'm excited to get into what we can focus on today. We're getting into like the drier months of summer in terms of content. So as always, if you have any interest in PRC 101 topics, bring them up. This is the time. We'll also soon be talking about field trip ideas. August is our field trip month. We're still fresh on that. And so maybe this is the warm-up brainstorm for next month's coming to ask you for your ideas for the field trip. Okay. Yes, let's go ahead and get started then.
All right.
With public comment. Is there anyone signed up for public comment now?
No one is officially signed up for public comment, but I do want to recognize Mr. Hugh Robinson, who is joined us tonight for the PRC meeting. I'm not sure if you wanted to introduce yourself or speak to any particular item.
I came for actually several reasons.
Yeah.
I'm involved in a piece of parkland that our Bluemont Civic Association is attempting to have recognized as a park. There's also a question about whether or not an individual can create a garden in that area. Both those issues are working. The garden is a little bit controversial, and the other issue apparently is going to take quite a bit of time to get through the hoops. And as I focused on these issues, I started to play around on the Arlington County web and found all these commissions and committees that have an oar on the water, in addition to all of the various units within Parks and Natural Resources that have a comment, and then all the volunteer organizations that would have something to do with having a garden put in. Is it a garden? Is it a nature area? So all those issues came up, and I became aware of this meeting coming up before our next Civic Association meeting next week. So I wanted to familiarize myself with your operation, and I was very grateful, gratified that I talked to Marco's boss for about an hour before coming here, and
nice.
He answered quite a few of the questions that I had. So the whole idea was, how do you get the train started, and how many stops does it make along the way before you get to your destination? So that's it. And then again, happy to be here.
So I just want to acknowledge, thank you for coming. And my understanding is that this is an issue that staff has to be looking into on a long basis. But I want to say, like, in addition to us just knowing about the issue, the Parks and Recreation Commission role here is really to be in line with the citizens and civic associations and all those downstream organizations we just talked about to represent the public voice when it comes to these subjects. So the way, that action item that we have, the way that we do that is by advocating through the county board, through letters, with unprecedented access to staff, right? To get our questions answered, just like you did today. And so if we can be helpful in that way, let us know. And also, rest assured, when the time comes to really talk about Bluemont, there will be a moment for us to be able to personally advocate where we'll be coming to you.
Well, that was my understanding, that you would be in this sort of that final approval area,
Yeah.
and making a recommendation to the board.
And of course, that takes time, right? That's way after staff gets to their actual recommendations. And so please keep us involved as you struggle through that.
And just an aside, I am a volunteer tree steward and have been for about 12 years now. I have probably been in 3/4 of the county parks, pruning trees, assessing them, and whatever. I've been at every Arlington public school campus, working with their staff and maintaining their trees. So I feel I have a pretty good idea of how the county operates on that level of providing tree and park maintenance and invasive removal and whatever. So that's my background.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So.
And I don't believe we have any other public commenters tonight.
Good, all right, and we won't take anything from the virtual participants?
No, not at this time.
Okay, great. Okay, then we're gonna move on to our first item today, which is the introductory conversation about a park naming project, Highview Park. So just as a reminder, we get this presentation today from Max, then he goes around and shops it to civic associations, historical preservation folks, and then they come back to us with the combined learnings that they got from that process. We then actually do vote, so that would require us to have a quorum, of course. And after that, it goes to the county board. We write a letter on it. Okay, so
before we move forward, in terms of folks that are using laptops in the room, I would suggest if you can mute your microphones, because I think that's going to minimize with the feedback. So just FYI. All right, Max.
Awesome. Well, hold on one moment. I'll pull up the presentation. And a link to this presentation should be on your as part of like the agenda packet in PDF form. Alrighty. Hello, my name is Max Ewert. I'm an associate planner with the Department of Parks and Recreation, and am here today to discuss a proposal to rename the baseball field at Highview Park to Alfred Foreman Senior Field. On the screen now is the field at Highview Park, framed by North Dinwiddie Street on the west and North Cameron Street on the east. The county naming policy requires that county facilities, including parks and, in this case, a facility in a park, shall generally be named according to the geographical, historical, or ecological relationship with the site. The commission, the Parks and Rec Commission, will seek comment from the Historic Affairs and Landmark Review Boards, the HALRB, and the Arlington Neighborhood Advisory Committee, ARNAC, and the appropriate neighborhood civic associations. The applicant, the Halls Hill Highview Park Historic Preservation Coalition, which is a mouthful, has reached out to the Highview Park Civic Association, who are in support, and we are awaiting a formal letter of support that will come at some point, hopefully soon. And I just wanted to note that for a lot of these naming processes, you typically get a couple options for what the park name could be. Usually we try to break it down into those geographical, historic, or ecological relationships. However, since this is something that is being proposed by a community organization, they've indicated that they are just searching to rename the field to the Alfred to be named for Alfred Foreman Sr. And that if that is not something that the PRC is interested in supporting, then they would rather not rename the field at all. The proposed facility name is to honor Alfred Foreman Sr. He's a native Arlingtonian who lived in the Highview Park neighborhood and whose family continues to live there. Alfred Foreman Sr. worked as a DPR employee for over 25 years, primarily working at the Langston Brown Community Center, and was deeply involved in the athletics program at the nearby facility. Additionally, the Preservation Coalition are working with historic preservation staff to apply for a grant to have a marker erected in his honor. In the image on the right, the proposed banner with the field name is outlined in red, and the location of the marker is located in orange. We will be sure to work with PNR, Parks and Natural Resources, staff to ensure that these proposed areas are in line with the county's policies for baseball fields. The next steps are, as Shruti outlined earlier, to head over to the ARNAC and HALRB meetings to propose these names and get feedback from them. After that, we would come back here for a final vote for the proposed name that would be recommended to the county board. Our tentative plan is to head to the RNAC and HALRB meetings in May, which are already scheduled, and then back here in June, hopefully for a formal vote, but July if needed. The tentative target date for the county board meeting is July 2023. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Thank you, Max. Thank you very much. This is great. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is not renaming the park, but renaming the field in the park?
That is 100% correct. Yes, it'll still be Highview Park. However, the baseball field would be named, for Alfred Foreman Sr. So it would be Alfred Foreman Sr. Field in Highview Park.
Has this been done before? This is a new thing to me. I've heard we've named parks, but I've never named a
Structure.
We never named a, well, Jenny Dean.
Jenny Dean
Jenny
has
Dean.
two. Yes.
Jenny Dean did that, but I just kind of thought that was all part of the deal.
Wait,
at
what's Jenny Dean?
What?
Is it Jenny Dean Field?
The Jenny Dean, the field.
Oh, well, that's the same name.
Yeah, exactly, but it still was.
So this is the first, Max? No problem.
It's new to me.
Yeah, so the Jenny Dean Field is an example of this. However, I will agree that this is not necessarily common with our park facilities. However, after kind of going through the county naming policy, we are fairly confident that this is totally in line with that. As our definitions or our county definitions for what a facility is rather vague, but playgrounds are included in that and fields as well. So we figured that this is something that would adhere to that county naming policy.
So nothing is replacing the name of this field. Right now it's just the field.
In Highview Park.
In Highview Park.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, yes.
Which is why it makes sense that they're not proposing.
Yeah.
And I don't think, in past we've looked forward to seeing the alternates that come in, that staff recommends and the proposal recommends. And I think in this case, instead, we're saying, I'm looking forward to seeing the history that comes from the Neighborhood Conservation Commission and the HLRB as well. So yeah, we'll add that.
So Shruti, I see that Adam's hand is up, but I think he's joined late, so I will reiterate what I said earlier in the meeting today. So because of not being able to reach an in-person quorum, Adam, no commission members who are participating virtually is able to participate within the discussion per our electronic meetings policy. The recommendation by the county attorney's office is to either step off of the meeting or you can still attend, but as a spectator or someone attending the meeting. That is the recommendation and guidance that we did get from the attorney's office. So just wanted to give you a heads up. This was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, so we will not be recognizing any virtual participation or discussion because we don't have an in-person quorum tonight.
Apologies, Adam. Really.
To provide a little bit more context on hold on, let me make sure I'm getting their name right. The Halls Hill Highview Park Historic Preservation Coalition. They are a local group that located in the Highview Park neighborhood who are trying to bring more attention to the local history, especially of the Black population that has lived there, dating back to when the neighborhood was segregated. And that's their primary goal through these projects.
Daniel, do you want to go?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, did the organization give any sort of explanation as to why they chose the path of like renaming the baseball field as opposed to pursuing an option of naming the park? Just curiosity as to why they chose that.
From my conversations with them, Alfred Foreman Sr. was his involvement in the athletics, specifically through the sports at the rec center, is their primary motivation for that. However, I'm not sure if there's any reason beyond that they're focusing more on the field rather than the park itself. But that's something that I can definitely ask them and bring back once we reconvene at a future meeting.
Mac, I was wondering, what's the current use of the field? Is it youth, or is it a travel team field? Is it a general open playground field, or just a square space? Or I'm not sure. I don't, is it on,
Baseball diamond.
is it a regularly scheduled baseball diamond? I don't know what its current use is.
I didn't measure, but I did a site visit last week and it appeared to be youth size. However, I can confirm that it could be some of these fields can be fitted for both. And I can confirm that with our PNR staff.
Because I was thinking, if this is like a school field, like around Quincy, you know, it's a, not that it would make a difference in the naming, but certainly everyone would know about the name change. Because it's on everybody's schedule. Anyway, so
I think it's pretty much a small local park. I don't see a lot of organized sports happening there. But there's room for like youth soccer and youth baseball.
Nice.
okay, no, thank you. I was just curious as to its current use.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Max. Looking forward to June/July when we have you back.
Alrighty, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to swiftly move to our second topic for the night. We have Bridget here. Thank you so much for being here from DES to talk to us about the Arlington Boulevard Trail feasibility study. And I know this has a smaller scope than what I was initially expecting, so I'm excited to learn more about it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I share my screen. I don't know if I should talk louder so people on the call can hear me. We'll see.
Bridget, if there's an issue with sharing, I do have it queued up here as well.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay, so there's a problem displaying the content. Oh, well, let me try one more time.
Sure.
Seeing my screen.
Yep, there we go. Perfect.
Okay, there we go. So thank you for having me again. My name is Bridget Obikoya. I'm a transportation planner at DES, and I've been working on this Arlington Boulevard Trail study since last February, and we kicked off the kickoff in March with a walking tour, and I don't know if any of you were in that walk, but we had the Transportation Commission Chair Chris Slack, board member, and other staff members and community members participated in that, and we are also working with consultant tool design. And there's a little bit of a lag, so I apologize for that. So we now have a draft study that we are about to publish, hopefully within the next week. They did send over some great recommendations, and I want to tell you all about them and how we got to this point, but there is a formal study that will be published to the website soon. Before I do that, I'll just give you a little bit about the background and how we got here. So the Arlington Boulevard Trail is one of several trails that make up this bicycle network. And the study area is in blue along Arlington Boulevard. And you can see the green is the full length of the trail, and it's disparate. It's disconnected in parts. It's on a trail, it's on the street in some parts, it's discontinuous in parts. But it is a great trail and a great facility because it connects to larger trails that encircle this trail that goes east-west through the county. So we consider it as a very important trail. And you can see that in the upper left screen, the Arlington Loop is what it's called. So how we got here. So we have several adopted plans that speak to trail improvements along this corridor. And over quite a bit of time, we've heard people complain internally and externally about the need for improvements to this multi-use trail. So the county board did allocate $200,000 in the 2022-24 CIP for us to study what would be feasible along this trail. And so we started last spring and we are ending this month. The objectives are to develop some concepts that improve the existing sections. There are some areas that are quite narrow, and I'll get into that and show you some of the images, but we want to remove those pinch points or widen them and remove some of the other barriers that we have that actually make it quite unpleasant to use. And we've also identified some preferred routing and some other improvements at intersections, and we wanted to make sure we included some ADA accessibility in parts where there are none, or they're substandard, I should say, meet or exceed the Master Transportation Plan recommended trail widths. Again, we want to remove those barriers and provide a more direct path where they're possible. So in the Master Transportation Plan, it's mentioned in the goals and policies of the MTP. It's mentioned in the bike elements and the pedestrian element, the need for improvements to this trail. And also the Public Spaces Master Plan mentions trails. And we also have a Vision Zero action plan, which came on board later, that includes part of this area. So we have plenty of guidance that will guide us through this process. And it's important to note that the entire trail that we're looking at is within VDOT right away. So this is very significant because it's requiring a lot of coordination with VDOT, and they've been with us in this process every step of the way. It's only been through conversations, though. Nothing has been sent to them for approval, which I've been told can be a different story. So just so you know. But that's where we are. We have been collaborating with them. So where are we today? The trail itself is that we're studying is a 1.3 mile area, and it starts at North Jackson Street. I will show you a map of that. And it travels west to George Mason Drive, and then it comes back east from George Mason to the Jackson Street Bridge. So we have quite a few destinations within the trail area: Jefferson Middle School, Fleet Elementary, TJ Community Center, the National Foreign Affairs Training Center, Columbia Garden Cemetery. There are several places of worship and lots of retail, including shopping and dining areas. So there's quite a bit in this small area that be a part of this. So for public engagement, we've, as I noted, we started the study. We had a kickoff meeting and a walking tour. We've actually had 2 walking tours. The first one was informal, and it was just internal staff and a few people wanted to come along. Wallow was also a part of that. And so we then kicked off with a formal walking tour that included more members of the community and some of the same folks that came out before. And then after that, we took feedback from the community and from the walking tour. We started an online engagement forum. And then we got to work. We started looking at what we could do to improve the trail, what would work, what wouldn't, and things like that. And so what we did was we took those draft recommendations and put them online as well so that we could show them to the public and gather feedback about that. And we did. We actually received quite a bit of feedback on that, and that process was quite successful. We also had an in-person pop-up and met with several of the community members to gather more feedback on the recommendations. So now we are here with our commission briefings. Talking to you. And this is everything I just said, so I'll just skip that and go to the next slide. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the initial feedback that we received wasn't as much as the second, I should say. So we received 166 responses. There were some themes that came out of it, which was very clear to us on the walking tour. People said they felt unsafe on the trail. There were some bike, pedestrian, vehicle conflicts at intersections. There is little to no buffer between the trail and travel lanes. It's not very welcoming. It feels narrow. It's not continuous. And then some of the areas there are issues with the pavement. And there were some other things that came out too, but the prevailing ones were the ones that I mentioned. So then we, out of that feedback, we developed some draft concepts, and they were, this is what a typical section looks like. We have guardrails shown with a 10-foot trail adjacent to road. And what we attempted to do is to provide, in most cases, at least 2 alternatives in every segment where we could do more than one thing or propose more than one thing. And the responses were open-ended, so people could provide more answers to the question, although each segment, in which I will show you, only had one question. And in this process, with these draft concepts, we worked internally with quite a few departments, including Parks and Recreation, Arlington Public Schools, VDOT, Virginia Department of Natural Resources, and NFATC. And so from the drafts, we received more comments that really spoke to what people liked and what they didn't. So people liked that there was sufficient trail width in the proposed concepts. It minimized impact to trees. There was quite a bit of vehicle separation, and it seemed much more safe than what's out there today. And so there were some things that respondents wanted changed a little bit more. I have to say that the first comment says priorities outside of the study area. Because they were open-ended comments, people could say what they wanted. So most people said, well, I'd rather you look at Prison Drive, or I'd rather you look at another street, or I'd rather you go to Gleek Road, or what have you. So we wanted to honor those comments in the feedback, but recognize that we were only concentrating on the study area. So what people wanted changed was, most people said nothing, which I thought was really nice. It let me know, at least, that we were starting to get to where people really liked the concepts and were comfortable with what we were proposing. Some people wanted the vehicle separation changed. Some people said they didn't like an alternative because we provided 2 alternatives in most cases. This, in some cases, was not as specific as I'd like. It was open-ended. So were they talking about the preferred alternatives, which I'm getting to, or this, or the second alternative? It's not clear. But some people said they didn't like the alternative to what they were being shown. So that's what we have. And again, some people said they didn't like that there were minimal tree impacts. And I, from looking at the responses, some people wanted more shading. They didn't like that some trees were being lost as part of this because we are in some places widening trails. We did work with DPR staff. Urban Forest was quite intently, though, on making sure that we did not impact trees to the extent that we could that were considered heritage or mature important trees. So we did identify some non-natives that weren't as important that we seem to be impacting in one of the recommendations, which I'll get to. So these are the concepts that we have decided on. And I'm just going to show you how I'm breaking down these concepts. So I broke down the study area into 7 segments. There are 4 areas on the north side of Arlington Boulevard, and there are 3 areas on the south side of Arlington Boulevard. And I broke them up based on the characteristics of the trail in that location. So for segment 1, which is from North Jackson Street to Columbia Gardens entrance, this is what the image is showing you what it looks like today. We have here the removal of a dying tree, and this was something that was brought to us from DPR staff when we went out to look at the trees. It was determined that the tree, there was a pinch point where we would not be able to widen to 11 feet, and they said the tree was dying and it probably would not be standing by the time we started construction in this area anyway, so it was okay to widen to that particular tree. But the main focus was to avoid mature, healthy trees. So in this location, the trail is 8 feet, we're widening it to 11, so that's really the only significant thing that's happening. There was another alternative which I will mention for segment 1, and it is the, oh, sorry, I'm in segment 2. So that was segment 1. So the only thing we're doing in segment 1 is widening to 11 feet. Segment 2 looks very similar to segment 1, except that there is a location, there's another pinch point where we have 2 trees. The tree is not dying, so we cannot remove it, or we do not want to remove it. We have 2 choices. We can either keep the 8 feet, or we can float the trail using an aeration mat. And this is the standard for the root aeration matting that is in our county standards. So those were the 2 options: to keep it as it is and provide a pinch point, or widen it with this mat to protect the root, the critical root zone. So these are the 2 options here. So another part of segment 2, which is important to mention, is along Arlington Boulevard at the off-ramp approaching Glebe Road. I don't know if you guys can see in this image. I can see it clearly on my screen, but there is a trail to the right of that off-ramp. It's some black asphalt there. People really do not like this location. It feels unsafe. You're immediately adjacent to cars. There's no separation, so we recommended a buffer. And if you notice, from the draft concepts to now, the way the buffer looks is different. The guardrail was shown in our first round of draft concepts. This one is showing vertical separation, which is a Jersey barrier. We are not in the design phase yet, so we don't know what those ultimate vertical separations will be, but we do know that the Jersey barrier looks more substantial and provides a better level of comfort over the guardrail. So again, we're maintaining the 11 feet at this location, and just to the right where the trees are overgrown, there is a retaining wall that we will maintain. So the widening will happen into the off-ramp. Okay, so now, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Ask questions at the end, or do we?
I prefer that you do, but if you rather.
Oh, okay, no, I'll wait, I'm just keeping.
Okay. Do you guys have a certain preference?
No, and it's great, and it's great.
Okay. All right, so at the intersection here, we have Glebe Road. That image I just showed you, we were approaching westbound Glebe Road on Arlington Boulevard at the off-ramp. There is a right turn slip lane that takes you from southbound Glebe Road. You can make the right here onto the Arlington Boulevard Trail. I'm sorry, Arlington Boulevard. I'm calling it Arlington Boulevard Trail because that's the recommendation, but we'll get there. So one recommendation is to either remove the slip ramp so that cars have to come to a stop and then make the right turn, which makes it easier for cyclists to feel safe. Or what we would do is still provide some level of protection for the cyclist, but we would continue across, have some signal timing, a right turn signal specifically for bikes and vehicles, and then it would be a two-part crossing at this location. So those are the 2 options that are on the table for this. And you can see there's a green arrow in the top in option 1. We are having some internal discussions about whether the crosswalk should be at the edge of the ramp or midway. So it's just really based on vehicle behavior. So we're currently in discussions with our traffic signal team and our traffic design engineers to see what's the best approach at this intersection. So what you see here may be changed slightly before it gets to our first phase of design. Okay, so now you can see here we have this proposal along the off-ramp that shows, this is from the off-ramp if you're going across, continuing on Arlington Boulevard onto the on-ramp, approaching George Mason Drive. This is the ramp you see today. There is no facility for a pedestrian or a cyclist. What we're proposing is that we narrow this on-ramp and provide a trail facility adjacent to this on-ramp. So that cyclists won't have to exit the trail, make a right onto George Mason, and then make a left onto Cathedral Lane to continue on west to George Mason Drive, which I will show you as our second alternative. Because if this does not become a feasible option, we do have another alternative that we can show you. But for this one, it's to provide a new trail adjacent to the on-ramp. So for this preferred location, what happens is the trail continues at the on-ramp, and then it is requiring the removal of the first, I want to say this carefully, the first off-ramp to George Mason Drive. That makes sense. There are two approaching this intersection. We have one just at Thomas Street, and then we have another one at George Mason. So there are two ramps, one that serves Thomas Street and Trenton Street, and then another one that serves George Mason. So what the closure of this first ramp does is force drivers who want to go to Trenton Street to go up to George Mason, make a right onto Second, and then turn into the community. And same thing, folks on Thomas currently turn on Trenton and then just make the right. So they would have to go up one additional street. And this is what that looks like today. There is a new development there in Whiteville Crossing. So the alternative to providing this trail facility adjacent to the on-ramp, which provides that continuity, is for cyclists and pedestrians to make the right off of the off of the Glebe Road off-ramp, make the right here at Glebe Road, and then make a left onto Cathedral Lane, which then connects back to the service road I just showed you, which is what we're doing today. So it would just be the existing condition, but what we would do is still improve this condition where it becomes a one-way once we pass the Dunkin' Donuts and the McDonald's, and cars will need to continue west and make a right onto Thomas or keep straight onto the service road to George Mason if they want to travel in a different direction. We have a question about the presentation. I'm not sure what you said. It's something about.
Share and reshape the presentation. I switched devices, could not.
Oh,
not
it's
see the
available on the
presentation.
website.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay.
Available on the website.
Oh, okay. All right. So also what we're doing is, so should I unshare and reshare? Someone just added another.
No, I'll take it.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. So we're also providing a wider facility on the north side of Cathedral Lane here, which today, as you guys can see in the images, is not a pleasant experience for even pedestrians. It's a very narrow sidewalk, and there are some utilities in the sidewalk and signs and things like that that we are hoping to improve with this buffer and widened sidewalk. And then in this instance, you can see there is still that preferred option where it's not the right. Am I going backwards? Sorry.
You went backwards.
Okay. So then you can see the facility continues along the north side of the sidewalk, and then it continues on Thomas, but the ramp is remaining open. So those are the two alternatives, both the much better conditions than what we have today, I must say, but they're quite different. One keeps the ramp open. One provides a new facility along the off-ramp. So there you have it. And then we have two options within this option where we widen the existing, which is a new sidewalk. So we wanted to honor that this Whiteville Crossing development did just build a new facility We could widen that to create a water trail, or we could create separated bike lanes and keep the existing sidewalk where it is. Okay, so now we're approaching the George Mason Drive intersection. And here, our preference is to provide the 10-foot facility. The intersection, though, provides some challenges for us because there's not a lot of width out there today as we approach the intersection. So what would need to happen to get 10 feet out of this is we would need to push the sidewalk north into the existing buildings that are, not buildings, but the existing land that is there. So there is a church, which we can see in this image, and then there are the Arlington Oaks Condo Association. You can kind of see a grade out or outline at the intersection, but it's set back much more than the church. So we do know that this option will rely on property redevelopment, where we can widen potentially through coordination with the owner for right away. And we did observe while we were out there that the building was for sale, so we do know that there is potential for redevelopment.
If you don't mind, I'll tell you that building has been for sale for
Years. I used to live right there.
Yeah, my son, his daycare was there when he was 3.
And is he an adult now?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Okay. Well, we have another alternative if that doesn't work, so.
Yeah.
So the other alternative is to remove a lane, which may have some issues with traffic queuing. So we know that this would be a challenging intersection. Probably the most challenging out of everything we will see today, because it does require the removal of a lane for us to get the 10 feet. And queuing, because the queue lane, as you can see onto Arlington Boulevard, is right there near the pedestrian tunnel, except on the Arlington Boulevard side. It could cause some challenges. So that is the issue with this alternative. So we would have to figure out from a design perspective how that would work. And then again, we're coordinating with our traffic team and VDOT on this, because this is a VDOT facility, so they would have the last say. So as we cross over Arlington Boulevard on this bridge to the left and then come back to travel east, our preferred alternative here is to keep these 2 lanes on the service road. There is some space for us to widen the trail to the south and get a 10-foot trail. There are, as we approach, there are 3 existing property, single-family residential properties adjacent to the National Guard Readiness Center. And there are some trees that are nicely framing the sidewalk there. We would pinch through those, well, we would create a pinch point or keep the sidewalk as wide as we keep it so that it doesn't affect the trees, but make it as wide as we can get it in that small section where those houses are before we approach the National Guard Readiness Center. And then once we pass that, we would widen it out to 10 feet as we approach the National Foreign Affairs Training Center. And what we're recommending is a median island here at the NFATC, because it's just a sea of pavement today. And this would at least provide some refuge for cyclists and pedestrians who are crossing at this location. And this would require some adjusting of the Capitol Bike Share Station, but we would still have a wider trail at this location. And you can see what this looks like today. So the alternative to that was to remove one of the travel lanes from the service road and widen the trail to the north so that we wouldn't impact anything to the south and carry that template through. The issue with this is that by removing a lane, we are concerned that it would provide quite a bit of queuing, because the National Guard Readiness Center, the gate is right at, it abuts the road. So people queue in the street. So if we were to remove a lane, that lane that's effectively used for queuing would just happen in the one lane and it would back up onto George Mason. But if there is redevelopment with the National Guard facility, if they decide to move their entrance, then hey, we have a great option, right? So for segment 6, as you can see, and that's Chris Slatt, the Transportation Commission Chair, standing there in the sidewalk sideways, I should add. That's what it looks like today. And you can see a vehicle approaching the off-ramp adjacent to him. So that vehicle has all of that space, and the pedestrian is barely situated in the sidewalk. So cyclists basically need to dismount and walk at this location because it feels very unsafe. So our proposal is it's the only option we have available to us because we have a wall, you can see in the image to the top right, just to the right of us, with a fence for the National Guard, the National Foreign Affairs Training Center. So what we would do is widen out into the off-ramp, take space from there, and push the template through to get an adequate trail and a buffer at this location. And we also heard that the Goodwill is planning to redevelop too. Yeah, so this happened a couple of months ago. So I have not seen an application for the Goodwill, but it was reported in the news that this will be the first location that they're planning, the Goodwill Industries facilities. The Goodwill Industries is planning to redevelop for multifamily residential as well as. So I thought that was really interesting and a great opportunity for us if and when we do decide to implement. Because after all, this is a feasibility study, so we don't know what the outcomes will be. So, so we're approaching segment 7 now. You can see the white dashed line between 6 and 7. So at the intersection, the template is pushed through to the intersection, you cross over, and you now have this scenario where the service road heading eastbound back onto Arlington Boulevard is wide, just like the rest of the ones we have in the study area. They're all fairly wide, and we believe they can be narrowed to 16 comfortably, just to provide some additional width for the trails. So this is the location where the trail would widen to the south and continue on the service road and provide a buffer for that separation. Okay, so then we continue that along to Arlington Boulevard, and there are residential dwellings, single-family houses, all along the service road in this stretch, all the way to the Jackson Street Bridge. This segment, most of it is currently being studied by VDOT. Well, it actually has already been studied by VDOT, and they are now in their request for proposals. They have a scope for design to remove these driveways that exit right onto Arlington Boulevard. And the thought is that a trail would continue through there, and there would be a service road provided specifically for those driveways so that they won't have access onto Arlington Boulevard anymore, which is a much safer condition. You won't have cars backing out onto a major roadway with speeding vehicles. There are still some design considerations that need to be worked out. The fire department did say they needed more space for a turnaround. So we need to work out some things related to that, but this is what we have now to go by. And there's also, this is something that wasn't in the first round of concepts. As you can see where the trail becomes a Y to the right of the screen, there is a heritage tree that sits right adjacent to the trail today. And Parks is concerned that the critical root zone will be heavily affected by any changes we make to this area. So the proposal is this is not a part of the STARS report. We added this, and we're going to work with VDOT on whatever we decide to do here. The proposal is to just avoid that. And then what we found was It also provides a better location for us to get back up to the trail at a gentler slope. So that is the last segment for the concepts. If the STARS report project does not go through, which they're in their request for proposals now, so I'm fairly certain it will, we would just keep the trail widened in this existing location and maintain the trail and go around the tree. So we are publishing the report hopefully within the next 7 days. Fingers crossed on that. We really want to get it out because we're almost there. Then we would start working with VDOT on our operational and safety analysis. We call it an OSAR. We'll initiate that process. We have a document framework scope that we have already crafted and we have shared with VDOT. So we're working with them on that. And then after that, we look forward to requesting funding and pressing upon the board the importance of having this Arlington Boulevard Trail segment designed and constructed. And that is the end of the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bridget. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to try and start off keeping it high level, but I know that there's a lot that we're going to want to dig into. So, Neil, I'd love for you to talk about Vision Zero questions you may have, any other things that may be going on. But yeah, please.
I need to share my screen again because I imagine if we have questions.
Yes, that'd be great. Okay, so first and foremost for me, what are the next steps that are for us really here? So when is this going to be going to the board? When will we need to gather our thoughts on our preferred options? I think first and foremost, seeing the feedback from the public was really informative. I think that first answer choice that said that people want things out of scope is a great reason for that we need to continue to fight for funding for studies like this. Mm-hmm. I think the second reason of do nothing is a great argument, like you said, to that public engagement process working. Mm-hmm. But I want to package that up in a letter eventually, not today, but what is the steps? Okay, so we have concluded the public engagement process. We're in commission briefings now. The next step is the interim step, which is the OSAR with VDOT. And then we get into design. It is my understanding that at that point, when we're in 30% design, there may be some changes that will facilitate the need to come back to the public. I'm not sure when that is, to answer the first part of your question, in terms of when engagement will happen for that. Or if there are changes significant enough that will require that. The second part of the question is related to, tell me, you asked two questions. I think it's mainly just that actually. So okay. Is it going to be dealt with in a piece by piece formation, or is it going to be all at once?
So that was the second part of your question. You asked about CIP.
Yes.
So CIP funding, the request, we start packaging up our gathering our thoughts for the CIP, working on that in the spring. And the fall is when we start with the board. So that would be 2024.
Okay, so in my opinion, we probably would not write a letter on the study. I would strongly suggest that we all get really familiar with these options. I used to live in Arlington Oaks and very familiar with the queuing that happens on Arlington Boulevard at that intersection. And perhaps when it comes back to us in the fall, then as an actual project, we will have form opinions, hear more public support, have people come.
And I have to say that we also have our online feedback form. That is closed, but we do have an email option for you to still email me any comments that you have, because the study will be posted and these recommendations are there and the previous engagement opportunities are there as well. So everything I'm showing you will be there, and you are more than welcome to send me at any time anything you have, so that as we start to go through this process, if there are refinements, they can be considered.
All right, I'll take it from commissioners in the room. Please raise your hand. Yeah, Richard.
Would funding for this be all in the transportation budget, or would any of the parks, would it hit the parks budget, do you know?
I don't know. That's a great question. And you did ask me about CIP. related to whether it would be one project or
Yeah.
broken into multiple projects. We are recommending that it's one project because it's easier to get funding for one large project, and then we phase it into separate smaller projects. So I don't know, to answer
Probably
your
just
question.
transportation, but I didn't know if there was.
Yeah, if
an
there's any
official
like right of
fee.
way, or if they have to buy property, then yeah, right? I don't know, we'll have to see. That's why, like, I think it's important to be familiarized with what the study outcomes are, because they haven't made that decision yet. And there will come a time, before next fall, supposedly, where the decisions are made between these options.
So the drivers of this were the trails is sort of disconnected and doesn't allow easy access for pedestrians or bikers through those spots.
And it feels unsafe for most.
And
That was the number one driver. We heard that a lot, that just riding on the trail was very uncomfortable.
so in terms of providing pedestrian and bike access to those businesses and shops and dining areas and so on, how many users are we talking about? What's the throughput on that now?
I have those numbers. I can't tell you what they are off the top of my head. I believe for both north and south, it's around 400 a day, which from what I understand is low.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess why I'm getting at this is we're also having a redo of the WNOD, and they're saying they need 18 feet.
Okay.
And it's, oh, you gotta have 18 feet. Yeah, we gotta have 18 feet, because VDOT says we gotta have this much space,
okay.
and we gotta have all this. So I'm a little curious as to why we don't have to have that same standard, and why we can make it less than that. And, I mean, maybe it's not a state requirement, but a negotiated thing, and WNOD has the right-of-way for that, because they call theirs a transportation project.
I see.
And you're not calling this a transportation
Not
project.
yet.
It is a transportation.
It's a study. Right?
Interesting. So I'm just curious as to why one can be 18 feet and the other can be less, and sometimes it can be 10 feet, and sometimes it can be not 10 feet.
I certainly refer to the guidance from the MCP for what the preferred minimum width was for trails.
Okay. Now, when you say trail, you mean combination bike and pedestrian?
Bike and pedestrian multi-use trail.
Okay, and these are, the pavement is asphalted, or?
In some segments, it's mostly concrete.
I think that
concrete
must be
asphalt? Okay.
that must be the designation, something
Yeah.
about.
Well, so, because I get, when people talk about trails and you think about park trails, well, those are wood chips. When you think
Oh,
about.
I see,
You see,
okay,
there's lots
yeah.
of different kinds of trails
Yeah.
that we deal with, but, okay, so,
Let's look into
Good question, though. I
no,
don't
so
know.
you've got 400 a day going through, so it's really
I know
not that
that's
much of a
from what
commuter
I'm
route.
recollecting.
Okay,
It
no, I'm
sounds
just trying
right
to get,
me.
like, you know, the
Yeah.
WNOD is like the interstate of bike traffic.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, the nickname is the bike trail. So I wanted to know is this a bike trail?
It is a
or-
bike trail, and I can
or
give you that
is it
actual
not a
number once I get
pedestrian
out of
trail?
this. I'll give you the actual number.
No, but I mean, what's the
So
pedestrian
it is a
part of this?
multi-use facility for cyclists and pedestrians.
So it's not pedestrians at their own risk.
No, it's a multi-use.
That's
trail,
because-
yeah. I get it,
Okay,
but I can tell you that number may go up once we're, because some people just don't want to use it because it feels
no,
safe.
okay, no, I've been on
Yeah.
parts of that, but I haven't been there in a long time. No,
At least remind me about it, because I have it. I just-
Someone that bike, particularly segment 2, I think, flash actually like that. And the one Chris Slatt was on, I've also just clipped by like. So I think the Jersey barrier versus the guardrails, is there a significant cost?
I have looked at the cost estimate, and the cost estimate didn't change from that, so I don't think it's significant.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's good.
Neil, do you want to please?
Yeah, so kind of have a couple questions, kind of going back to that conversation we were just having before. Like, the entire section we're talking about here, is it all formally called the Arlington Boulevard Trail, right? Like, it's currently just like a smaller section. And like the roads that make up this section that we're talking about aren't really like recognized as part of the trail currently, right?
Actually, the only part that's in this study that's not recognized as part of the trail is the part that we're adding, which takes you straight onto this on-ramp in segment 3 here. The rest is considered on the bike map as part of the Arlington Boulevard Trail, and there is a route that takes you through Cathedral and straight to points west, and it's all considered.
Okay.
It's just, the MTP says it's discontinuous on-street, off-street facility.
That's easy.
And so I guess like the goal in mind after this, if this project comes to fruition, everything's finalized, is to kind of like, because I'm not aware that that was like all considered part of the same trail. Is the intention to like put signage up there and like make it clear that like this is all part of like a trail network that will bring you throughout like the Arlington Boulevard network?
We do mention wayfinding in the project, and we have another planner who's working on making, creating a wayfinding package, even if this does not go through, because it's not, that was something else that came out of this. It wasn't clear where to go. So yeah, wayfinding would be a part of this, or just something that happens anyway.
Yeah, is there a lot of like, in your feedback that you received, was there a lot of contention between pedestrians and cyclists interactions on
We
those
received
sections?
some feedback. People said there were conflicts that they were uncomfortable with. Most of the conflicts people mentioned were pedestrian vehicle, cyclist vehicle, but some people did say they'd rather have a separate facility for pedestrians and cyclists.
Okay. So it wasn't a
Perhaps
predominant
on-street
situation.
bicycle lane with sidewalk or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know how significant the feedback was on.
But it wasn't that great. But I did see a comment. Or
Okay.
two. Some people say cyclists ride too fast.
Yeah, I would imagine. I was curious because some of those narrow sections, I can imagine there's a lot of potential like problems that happen when the sidewalk narrows to like 4 or 5 feet and there's a cyclist and a pedestrian.
I don't know how a cyclist could do that actually. In that space adjacent to the road, but I mean, it happens. I actually have some images. So.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Just walking half the time, which is what I do.
All right. Anything else for people in the room? I'm just going through the presentation.
May I make a comment? Even though I'm not on the
No,
commission?
right?
Unfortunately not, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. But
You can send me
hopefully-
an email if it's something.
Yeah,
Has a number.
we can have informal discussion. Yeah.
I have a nature question here. We talked about mature trees, but the only way you get mature trees is if you have littler trees coming up behind them. So that means that if we don't allow space to have the littler trees coming up behind them, those mature trees aren't going to be there in 15 years. So what I'm saying is are we only concerned about mature trees, or are we concerned about what's coming up underneath the subcanopy?
We actually looked at all of the trees. I think there were only some. In this area, I think it was where DPR staff
Okay.
didn't seem to be as concerned with the trees. I mentioned one mature tree specifically because it was a heritage tree that
Yeah.
were very, very.
So Vincent's group looked at this and they
Vincent
said,
and Melissa.
okay, all right, thank you.
I worked closely with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Bridget. We look forward
Happy to
to
be here.
the study being published and next steps on the project itself. I think it would be great if there are any other moments where Parks and Rec could be beneficial or useful in maybe sorting out some of these decisions. Please let us know. We can have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for a good presentation.
Thank
you.
Walking us through 7 segments.
I know,
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
But it's
Playing
so
Legos
worthwhile.
with us.
It's worthwhile. I know. And that was one of the feedbacks I gave the consultant was that I wish we could just show it all in one concept plan.
But I think it lends itself that the Arlington 50 is a corridor that you drive it well, you probably know what those sides are. So then you can imagine what this on off look like. That is the visualizing problem here.
Yes.
Having
Yeah.
some experience driving down that road in directions.
I think that the nice thing about breaking it down into those sections was I was able to visualize and following right
On the maps, yeah.
on my
okay,
computer,
yeah.
like visualizing it as you're like going through step by step and looking at specific intersections. So that was helpful to compartmentalize it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, we have a little bit of an uneventful rest of the meeting. We have a staff report.
We do, no additional updates related to that.
All right. We do have commissioner reports as well that have been submitted. Thank you to Neil from the Vision 01. I'm not gonna sit here and bore us with talking through it right now. I don't think it's the best use of our time, especially since not all of us will contribute. So moving on from there, we're gonna skip other business.
Yes, we previously had letters to the county board and a letter regarding Quincy Park, but I believe that item will be tabled to next month at the earliest.
Correct, yeah. Great, all right, so then officially I'm going to adjourn the Parks and Recreation Commission for April. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope to meet quorum in person next month, and I think we'll be more successful in doing so. To all of our folks on the phone, please feel better soon. To your partners, to your families, take your emergency and wear your masks, we're judicious. I'll try and do my best as well. So yeah, talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
You said the meeting was adjourned, so I
Yeah,
thought maybe I could come back.
Yeah, feel free if you want to speak now.
And then if you wanted to say.
Yeah.
I would say that for the